Making that replicant video gave me a real craving for some Flash rogues, so I decided to finally do this video, which I actually teased down in the comments almost a year ago now. Ironically enough though, a majority of the stories on this list won't be Flash stories. I will also not include anything with the second and current Trickster, Axel Walker, as I personally just don't like that character. Remember, these are just my personal favorites, and don't forget to list your own favorites down in the comments. Anyway, here we go. Number 5. Danger in the Air. Published in the Flash 113 in 1960, this was the first Trickster story ever made. The writer was Broome and the penciler Carmine Infantino. In it, we meet James Jesse, a young kid and member of the trapeze family known as the Flying Jessies. Careful, the Flying Graysons may sue you there. James didn't actually want to be a trapeze artist though, as he feared heights, and rather spent his time reading about his reverse namesake, Jesse James, the famous Western outlaw. Unfortunately though, his parents forced him. So James came up with a trick. He invented a pair of airwalking shoes, which made it impossible for him to fall. Yeah, he just invented them, just like that. Just go with it, it was the Silver Age. Anyway, with these special anti-gravity shoes, James Jesse became a sensation and the main attraction of the circus. Years later, he's a big star, but still there's something that's missing. After all, James never wanted to become a trapeze artist in the first place. He remembers his old childhood idol, Jesse James, and realizes what's missing in his life. Daredevil adventures. Thus, James decides to use his shoes for a series of outlandish crimes, becoming an arch criminal, a mixture of his hero and the circus scene in which he grew up. James becomes the Trickster. Putting a spin on Jesse James's old train robberies, the Trickster sticks up airplanes in mid-flight. I really like this origin story for Trickster, despite some goofy parts. But then again, all Flash villains had goofy parts in their original origins. I also really like this whole Jesse James thing he's got going for him here. And his scheme to rob airplanes high up in the sky is also really cool and original. For some reason, all of this was dropped in later Trickster stories. I know he couldn't just rob airplanes all the time, but it would have been nice to see it every now and then. There are some flaws with this story though, which is why it doesn't rank higher. It's a bit too short, and the ending is pretty anticlimactic. Still, a must-read for any Trickster fan, and a pretty damn good introduction of the character. Number 4. The Trickster Strikes Back. Published in the Flash 121 in 1961, this was the second Trickster story ever made. It was again done by Broome and Infantino. The plot here is actually pretty simple. The Trickster breaks out of jail, following his defeat at the hands of the Flash in the previous story, and starts a new crime wave in Central City. Instead of robbing planes, his gimmick is now to steal other gangsters' loot as the Flash apprehends them, nabbing the goods right out of the hero's hands. So he saves the trouble of actually pulling off the capers himself, and also play one giant trick on the Scarlet Speedster. And yeah, that's it. It's simple but still pure gold. I feel that this is the greatest Flash vs Trickster story out there. It shows a perfect depiction of their rivalry. Trickster is a playful crook who plays tricks on the Flash, while also getting on the loot for himself. There's also one moment in the story where Jesse thinks he's actually killed the Flash, and he reacts a bit unexpectedly. Instead of celebrating, Jesse gets upset, sad that their exciting rivalry is now over. Who will he play tricks on now? That's really how I want my Flash Trickster relationship to be like. Kinda like a less dark Batman and Joker rivalry. The Trickster isn't a psychotic killer after all. Anyway, the perfect Silver Age Trickster story, and it's a shame we didn't get more of these. It seemed like the subsequent stories merely focus on gimmicks as opposed to on character. Number 3. The Blue Devil. So now we're done with the Flash, and none of his stories will show up on the list anymore. Instead we jump to obscure DC hero the Blue Devil, created in the mid-80s. The Trickster appeared in the very first Blue Devil story, published as a special feature in Fury of Firestorm 24 in 1984. The story was written by Gary Cohn and Dan Mishkin and penciled by Paris Cullen. That same month, Blue Devil's very own ongoing series was launched, featuring the work of these same gentlemen. In that first story, Trickster tries to steal stuntman and effects wizard Dan Cassidy's Blue Devil suit, a marvel in special effects. This was of course before the suit had bonded with Cassidy and permanently turned him into the Blue Devil. Trickster returned a few issues into the ongoing series, asking Blue Devil for help against a mysterious organization that was after him. He showed up again a couple of times throughout the run as a sort of semi-retired rogue, trying out his luck as an effects man in Hollywood instead. So yeah, this isn't one single story. I'm listing the entire 1980s Blue Devil run here. It's kinda funny, but it was actually this series that really nailed down the character of the Trickster, at least when we're talking the old classic version. The previous Flash comics portrayed James as a pretty straightforward guy. Sure, he had joke gimmicks, but he was a fairly serious villain that didn't really have a defined personality. The Blue Devil comics, a very comedic series in style with Justice League International, turned out to be the perfect fit for the Trickster. Here, James was depicted as a much more fun and jokey character, which he really should have been all along. He was also given more depth and made more sympathetic. Not quite a villain, but also not a hero. A morally ambiguous rogue who sometimes stole and sometimes helped out the hero. It's kinda strange he had to switch titles for that to happen, but it is how it is, and the 80s Blue Devil run is another must-read for any Trickster fan. Number 2, Underworld Unleashed. The big DC event of 1995, spanning all titles with its various tie-ins. We're only here to talk about the core series though, the Underworld Unleashed 3-issue miniseries, written by Mark Waid and penciled by Howard Porter. In this arc, the demon Neron offers a deal to every villain in the DC universe, and some heroes too. He'll grant them whatever they wish, like enhanced powers or more luck in their crime sprees, in exchange for their souls. This is of course part of a big ploy, as Neron is out to conquer the entire world, and he needs plenty of souls to do so. Most of the villains are actually brought to Neron's realm, where he offers them their deal, and Trickster is among them. James, who's been down on his luck lately, could use a deal better than anyone. Well, except for Killer Moth maybe, but Neron never offers him one. Instead, he seems to want Trickster around, and appears to enjoy toying with him. That was a big mistake though. Like so many other people, Neron really shouldn't have underestimated James Jesse. Trickster soon realized what's truly at stake here, and decides to reach deep into his bag of tricks and do whatever it takes to stop Neron's evil scheme. It's kind of funny how the Trickster is basically the main character in this big crossover event. A lot of the story is narrated by him, and yes, it is he who's responsible for eventually stopping Neron. This Trickster is also a bit of a revamp. He wears a new costume, but more importantly, he's portrayed more as a con man than a jester type character. This take on the character, as the most brilliant con man in the DC universe, is what I like to call the 90s Trickster. Following this arc, this is how James was depicted for the rest of that decade. But then Jeff Johns came around and ruined the character. This con man portrayal is my favorite version of Trickster, as not only is he more competent than ever before, but it also helps him stand out. You can't really call this Trickster a Joker knockoff. Underworld Unleashed is the one that started it all, and conning a powerful demon like Neron is probably the character's greatest feat ever. He saved the entire world. How many rogues can say they've done that? And now my favorite Trickster story. Number 1, I'll Take Manhattan. Published across 6 issues of Catwoman in 1999, this one was written by Devin Grayson and penciled by Jim Ballant. This story takes place during Batman No Man's Land, and our good old friend Selina Kyle decides to leave the ruined city. After a quick stop in Paris, France, she returns to the States and pays a visit to New York City. There, the feline fatale embarks upon her most ambitious scheme to date. She's gonna conquer the Big Apple. She begins by scamming herself into the position of Vice President of Randolph Industries, one of the biggest firms on Wall Street. Before you know it, Selina is the president, replacing Randolph himself. But that's not enough. Selina soon enters the race for New York's mayor, launching a successful campaign, gaining considerable support among the citizens. Randolph's associates, the New York mob, eventually take notice to this rapidly rising newcomer, and they don't like her success. They feel threatened, and after a few failed assassination attempts by B-graders, they realize they must fight fire with fire. Thus, they enlist the service of the greatest con man to ever live, the Trickster. But whose side is the Trickster truly on? Nobody has ever written the Trickster as well as Devin Grayson does here. He's a bit of a goofball, yet also a very competent grifter. A mastermind, I dare say, with a silly and lovable personality. I don't know why everyone can't write him like this. Seeing Jesse with Catwoman is also a real treat. The two are a perfect match and make for a hilarious pair of costumed hustlers. They keep conning each other, but there's also something there between them, a spark. And Jesse even say outright that she's the most fascinating woman he's ever met. Seriously, we need some fanfic with these two. And would you believe it? Compared to Jessie, Selina is a bit of a rube. One of the covers asks if she's met her match. And yes, I'd say she has. While conning Neron was Trickster's greatest trick, this somehow still feels more impressive. I mean, it's Catwoman for God's sake. Whoever thought that anyone could ever pull one over on the Catwoman? Trickster has never been so impressive as he is here, he's never been so fun, and his chemistry with Selina is superb, despite the fact they're just drawings on a piece of paper. It's a mystery why these two haven't been paired up together again after this. So there you have it, those are my top 5 favorite Trickster stories of all time. It's kinda funny how they're all in chronological order. I guess Trickster just kept getting better and better, until Jeff Johns came on board. I like most of what he did on The Flash, but his FBI agent Trickster sucked. He's also the one who introduced Axel Walker, who soon replaced Jesse. Jesse's dead now, in fact he's been dead for over 10 years, and it seems like he ain't ever coming back. They could have brought him back in the New 52, like they did with the original Mirror Master, Sam Scudder, but they didn't. I guess Axel Walker is the one and only Trickster these days. It's sad, but what are you gonna do? Read these stories, that's the least you can do. Anyway, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.